Great.
I thought it's important for you to know how it is that I'm going to make these cuts in this metal sheet. And here we have a window that I'm cutting around, and then there's a little electrical panel roof over to the right-hand side. And so there's about a dozen measurements that we need to take in this particular panel cut. And so the important thing to do is to have a reference point of where you're going to start with transferring marks from the actual wall where it's going onto your sheet. So these reference points, or your control points, call them, is here. We know that the bottom of the sheet is going to be resting approximately 1/2 inches above the base flashing. So that's our reference point over here. Okay. Our left reference point is over here on this ridge that we've discussed on another video about where I'm taking my measurement. You need to take it from somewhere, and so this is a really easy way to take it. Now if I'm taking it here at this center line of this ridge, then I know that it's from the back side of this sheet, which is going to be the high point of the measurement. This is 1 5/16 from the back side high point to the front side high point, because this is 2 5/8 inches on center, so it's just half of that number. So that way we have a way that we can actually take measurements that make sense. So our control points are important. Now, so coming up here then, so we've got our measurements from high point to the end of the flashing, okay? And then I have a 3/4 of an inch between the bottom of our cut below the flashing to the top. That way it gives us a little reveal here. It's nice to have a little reveal, especially if you have wood siding, but here in metal it's just nice to have a reveal, and 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch is about right. Now this sheet right here comes over to this point. I've taken a level line and I've moved it up so that I have a reference point over here, because it comes into the sheet just a little bit, about 1 inch approximately. So let's take a look at what it looks like when I draw these on a piece of paper. Okay, so this is for this sheet right here. So you'll notice here that I have the control points coming off of the bottom, and also my references points on the high ridge of the back side of this sheet that we're working on. Okay, I'm moving from left to right because that's the direction of where the wind is coming. The prevailing wind's the southeast, and the Taku winds in this particular location, it's in Douglas, Alaska, exceed 100 miles an hour at times. So it's important to make sure you got your laps for the weather right. So you can see here that I've made all of my vertical numbers, I've written them in such that they are sideways, and so that when I take my numbers, I know that these numbers, 76.5, 75 3/16, 88.5, etc., are all of the vertical numbers. You'll notice that I further have these marks here ticked and with an arrow showing where they're going, so that there's no mistaking for myself when I make all of these numbers, and also if I'm trying to convey this to somebody else for a cut. Anybody can cut off of this without any problem, and it'll be just right. So again, all of the numbers, here is my horizontal numbers, 24 1/4 to this mark from the edge of the high point in the back sheet. Okay, now when I say the high point, once again, come on over here, back up a little bit. So 1 5/16 to the high point right here is where I take my reference number on, okay? Which leaves me at the 0 at the center line of the ridge that I'm lapping over, okay? And that's where I make my reference marks. And coming over here on the sheet, you can see, I've got my horizontal cuts and my vertical cuts. And the first thing that I make when I'm cutting this sheet is I make these long horizontals first. And I like to always put a line and put stop, because sometimes it's just easy to see when you put stop. You know for sure that I don't go any further than here. If you don't have these, and sometimes you know the line continues on because you don't have this reference mark right here before this is on. Sometimes this goes further, and if you're spacing out, then you'll cut further than what you want to do, and that's not so good. And you're gonna have to waste a sheet. And over here, the same thing. This is the head sheet. So the first thing that I cut when I'm cutting this head sheet, right, the head of the flashing, is I cut right here at this point, and I just plunge cut my saw right through into here. So it's only making this far of a cut. There's no sense in making this entire cut when I'm going to make another cut for the top of the head all the way across it. And this is the one that matters. This is the one where you see all the way to the stop point right here. So when I'm all done, then I'll end up, this is still going to be attached here, but then I just come on here with the 10 snips or your metal electric shears, and then I cut this vertical line that represents the window opening all the way down. And so I just wanted to let you know that that's how I do it, and if that helps you to do it better too, then that's great.